Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'd like to point out that Ms. Bonamici, in her mentioning of the 14 counties in Texas that were not in attainment, omitted the fact that there are 254 counties in Texas. 14 out of 254 ain't bad, particularly when in many of those counties, if not all of them, much of the ozone is international ozone from Mexico. My guess is that if Oregon were subjected to 75% of the Oregon in that state coming from Canada, she might have a different view of the attainment restrictions and the application of NAAQS. But I'd like to address my first question to Ms. Rath, and that is, what has San Antonio done to remain in attainment with the 2008 NAAQS, ozone NAAQS?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I really have to salute both our public and our private entities for what they have implemented voluntarily out of concern for the health to ensure they are in compliance. And we've had very aggressive action taken. CPS Energy, which is our municipally owned electrical utility company, has been very, very aggressive to reduce the demand for electricity from coal-fired power plants. They implemented programs, and the savings were equal to shutting down a medium-sized coal plant. They met their goal of producing 1,500 megawatts of renewable energy capacity 2 years ahead of schedule, and this is equal to 20% of their power generation. And that portfolio includes both wind, rooftop solar, and utility-scale solar. I have to really thank CPS Energy for 2 aggressive actions they will be doing this year that will have a significant impact upon our ozone precursors. Okay. They are shutting down the Dealey plant, which is our largest and oldest coal-powered plant, shutting that down early, which will have a significant improvement, and they've made tremendous investment in the technology at our remaining Spruce plant for that.
Okay. Let me go briefly to my next question, which is, what are some of the economic consequences of a non-attainment designation?
Yes, sir. Last year, we contracted with economists at St. Mary's University to look at the cost of non-attainment in Bexar County. And at a marginal classification, the low estimate is over $117 million. The high estimate is over $1 billion annually. So for every year we're in non-attainment, there's a potential for over $1 billion cost to just our 8-county MSA.
Okay, and that has an impact on economic growth and jobs and income and everything else. Okay.
Very much so, yes, sir.
Let me ask a final question to all of our panelists here today, and that is, should international ozone be taken into consideration when applying NAAQS to various regions in the U.S.? Okay, Ms. Rath.
I certainly think it should. How can you hold a community or a region responsible for what's totally and completely outside of its control? If they would take international transport into consideration, we would be well under the limit, because we're barely exceeding at 72 and 73 parts per billion at our 2 regulatory monitors.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Franquist?
I would agree with Mrs. Rath. I think we have to take into consideration, especially when we're seeing studies indicate that 83% of the ozone in southern Arizona is from international sources.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Craft?
I actually disagree with Ms. Rath. I would point to the 2015...
Wait, let me make certain I understand you. You do not think international ozone should be taken into consideration?
I guess what I'm saying is that are you talking about San Antonio specifically?
No, just in general, should international ozone be taken into consideration when we apply NAAQS to various regions in the U.S., wherever it might be? In other words, obviously, San Antonio is an example. If you've got 75% of the ozone being international ozone, should that be taken into consideration?
Well, first, there's 2 things. One is that international transport is actually a very small percentage of the ozone in the region. Yeah. I wanted to point out one inaccuracy in Mr. Franquist's opening statement.
Okay, but I tell you what, before you go to the other witnesses, I'd just like an answer to my question, and really it's yes or no, should the international ozone be taken into consideration when applying NAAQS?
It is taken into consideration.
Okay, so you're saying it should be?
It is already, yes.
Okay, well, saying it is doesn't answer the question as to whether you feel it should be.
Saying it is saying that it is already being taken into consideration.
And you agree with that?
all sources of ozone are taken into consideration
But
with
you agree
regard to the
that,
NAAQS.
you agree that international ozone should be taken into consideration? I assume you're saying yes.
Yes, it already is.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stella.
From a designation perspective, I would have to say that I would agree that it is, and I don't necessarily think that you can quantify that amount as you go into the designation, but from an attainment demonstration perspective, I do believe that international emissions need to be accounted for, but we have to be cautious because of the large uncertainty in predicting that amount.
Fair enough. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair